Registrations are currently open for the next Vultology certification class. So if you want to master how to visually read people, this is the place to do it. You can visit vultology.com/product/practitioner program. This is going to start on March 16th and go on for 6 weeks, but you also get unlimited access afterwards. So today I wanted to talk about a new development that's emerging in the CT system, and that is the tentative production of a psychological analysis tool. Now, as you guys know, in CT, the primary way that we type people is through Vultology, and there's very good reasons for that. First of all, it's much harder to fake Vultology, although, there are some things people can do to kind of tweak their signals. Generally speaking, it's very hard to kind of fake some of these signals, especially mouth expressions, eye directions, toggles. These are not the kind of things that people deliberately try to add into their Vultology. It's kind of an involuntary effect. So reading these involuntary embodied effects reveals cognition in a way that doesn't allow for prep time to polish up or change or to alter things as much as you might do in other forms. For example, that's why historically I've been against typing people through, let's say, a book or through text, because text gives you a lot of time to polish up your presentation and edit it and tweak it, and maybe even ask other people to edit it for you, proofread it, to where the final product may not represent what you think or what you would say otherwise in a real-time conversation. Or you might have learned things in school and adopted beliefs from parents or from someone else, such that when you articulate thoughts, they might not actually be your thoughts. They might be the thoughts of other people. So there are many problems with doing psychological analysis. However, be that as it may, Vultology ultimately needs it, because if you just have a vultological analysis tool, then you don't really know how well it compares to psychology unless you also independently measure psychology and then see how close the match is. Now, of course, we've been measuring Vultology against psychology this whole time, all the years that we've been doing CT. However, what's different now is we're going to try to formalize how it is that we measure psychology, just as we formalized the method of measuring Vultology through the codifier. So we're going to have two different specific tools that both independently measure people, and then we're going to see what is the rate of connection between those two tools, and they're going to be separate such that there's really no overlap between the two tools, to see if we can perform studies and to see if there's statistical significance between the two methods. So without further ado, here is a prototype of what this tool may look like. So what you see before you is a Google Sheets document where I'm putting in all the different facets that are measured. Each row here has a different facet, and over here you have different ways to measure, either low, medium, high, or explicit conditioned. I'll get into what those mean in a second. But essentially, from a broad strokes point of view, this is an evaluation that is done by a trained practitioner who knows how to measure each of these facets. So, okay, now let's get into the tool. You'll see that the title here is Psychological Tool 0.3, so it's not even at 1.0 yet, which would be the official launch. And so currently I'm doing some testing with this, and if you would like your cognition to be analyzed through psychological means, through text, if you have transcripts of you or books or things you've written, essays that you would like to be analyzed through this tool, I have a checkout link below here that you can click if you're interested in that. So thank you in advance for anybody who would like to have their psychology evaluated. So now let's get into it. How does this tool work? So over here you see that these facets are divided into three sections. They are philosophical, behavioral, or linguistic. So why these three? Well, each one of these on its own has its pros and cons. The best analysis, according to my current way of thinking, is done by a combination and a balance of these three, checking and balancing one another. So for example, philosophical declarations are things somebody might say about the ontology. We talked in the series so far about ontological affirmations, right? That's often how you can know what kind of cognition a person is using. However, it is possible to learn a certain philosophical belief through schooling. So let's say you study philosophy in college and you really resonate with a certain thinker, but then next year you resonate with a different thinker of a completely different opinion. Does that mean your type has changed because you've shifted philosophical positions? Obviously not, which means that different types must be capable of holding different philosophical viewpoints, because even one person throughout the years of their life, they may be able to change their view of philosophy. And yet there's still a correlative factor. There's still high correlation between certain philosophical viewpoints and type. So we keep that in there, but we don't use it exclusively. Secondly, we use behavioral motifs. So these are the motifs and the shades that we've been discussing so far in these series, such as, for example, here at JE, the motif of productivity, business-mindedness, achievement focus, entrepreneurship. So these are things that people do because a person could say a certain thing as a belief statement, and yet they don't walk the walk in any way that resembles that. So it matters what people think, what they cognitively affirm as a belief, but it also matters what people do, how they act. And so this is given an equal weight as the philosophical, more cognitive affirmations. And thirdly, we have how it is that they construct their sentences or even their paragraphs or their train of thought as can be understood through the text. So, for example, syllogistic form refers to a kind of logical reasoning, like given X, then Y, premises, conclusions. This kind of form is a textual form that can actually be reflective of certain people's writing styles. And so we analyze the language structure to see how people are thinking, how are they forming their reasoning chains in order to get a sense of what their type is. So those are the three methods that are used in tandem in order to get the most robust picture of a person's type. And so far, it's having a pretty high success rate. It's not perfect. It's not as good as Vultology. Maybe it'll get up there. But I'm excited to see where this is going. Okay, so that's a general overview of how the facets work. Now, the scoring system. Low, medium, and high are scaled as faintly implied, and explicit, right? So what does this mean? So when you're analyzing text, you can see whether a certain thing is said explicitly in the text. Let's take this one, the first one, causality. It says the universe is contingent on cause-effect sequences, inputs and outputs. An explicit example of this would be, let's say that you're a mathematician or a physicist, and you believe, and you say in an interview or in a text, you believe that the universe is essentially a machine that is running. In that sense, you believe that causality is the fundamental description of reality. It is a causal machinery that is just turning out results, right? Some people actually don't believe that, so it's not obvious that that is the default position. But if somebody articulates that explicitly, then we mark here a number 1, right? We always mark a number 1 for each of these cells. Now, there are lighter ways of saying this. For example, somebody might not be a theoretical physicist claiming this at the ontological level of the universe. Somebody could be a life coach that, for example, says something to the effect of, you get in what you put out. You put in the push-ups, you get out the muscle. You put in the work for the relationship, you get the happy marriage. And this is not talking about the universe, but in a way, the philosophy that they're using is kind of broadly applied to everything in life. Therefore, it is a kind of philosophical affirmation of how reality works in the implied sense. So you might write implied for something like that. Is that making sense so far? And then at other times, people make statements that are causal in nature, like, for example, how to change a tire, how to run a business. And these things it require a causal understanding of the universe, or at least of the situation that you're in, but they don't go outright and state it. And so there you'd put faintly implied. So you see how this is working, right? Now, there's a fourth category, and this is called explicit but conditioned. These are explicit but conditioned beliefs. And these require a keen insight from the analyst. So the analyst has to be trained to recognize when a belief is acquired through conditioning, especially imposed conditioning, or whether it's spontaneously emerging from the person's own personal evolutionary trajectory, right? So, for example, if somebody is raised in a very strict religious tradition that requires them to believe certain things, then that is an explicit belief that they carry, but it is conditioned. So that doesn't get as much points as something that you might have somebody believe out of their own volition, right? So if you mark 1 here, that also gives 1 point in the calculator. We'll talk about the calculator later. But it won't give as many points as if it's an explicit spontaneous belief. That way, we are also accounting for environmental pressure and not overmarking that pressure. It's very important to account for this in order to get a proper analysis of a person's psychology. Without doing this, you're going to get a lot of false positive results. All right, so that's how the tool works in a nutshell. And then in the other page here, the results page, you will see which of the 16 types gets more heavily weighted from the data that was in the other page. Eventually, when this tool gets fully refined, it'll appear in a more sophisticated way. For example, in our Vultology website, where you have all this information more neatly displayed in different grids and diagrams. But for now, since it's in development, we're working with this Google Sheets. But look forward to that in the future. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say for this video. I'm going to do some follow-up videos where I'm going to talk more specifically about how it is that we measure the different facets, so you can also learn along with us and be with us on the ride as we develop this tool to be a complement to the Vultology codifier. Okay, well, that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.